Welcome back to OCG Garage, guys. Look what I have behind me. Exciting news. I am stoked to have her back. I've driven her 2 to 3 times already since I've had her. Honestly, I missed it. Just a little recap. I did record when I picked it up. The paint, again, guys, looks a lot better. I'm sure you guys can see right off the bat. Look, it has a little bit of shine to it. So my buddy did a really good job. I don't want to be repetitive on what I said in the other video because, to be honest, I forgot what I said. So I just want to take a second and admire the car. It's already gotten rained on a couple of times. It's that time of the year. By the way, I need to figure out something fast. I need to find a way to close this door and get 2 cars in this row. I do need a lift. I really do. Honestly, I'm trying to manage spending. I need a lift to go right here just so I could put the Vet up top or put the McLaren up top and then have this side over here to work on the car. I don't know yet. I'm trying to figure it out. And also, I'm just trying to be a smart adult and trying to manage money. But besides that, let's get into the car a little bit. So the car's been a blast to drive. It still has a slight hesitation on wide open throttle. It's very annoying, but honestly, guys, I just cruise around in the car. The car's a turd. It's not fast. So now, even though it is a stock turbo, everything is pretty much 99% bone stock. It makes a lot of induction noises. Maybe nobody around me hears it, but I do inside of the car. So it makes me happy. So look at the car overall. Obviously, it's hard to tell because, look, everything is rained on. Everything is still, I guess you could kind of tell. So the majority of the scratches, I'm not going to lie, they're still in the paint. But it's 80% better. The hood, he wasn't able to do much with it. If you remember from my last video, the hood and the B-pillars, that's where there was the least amount of paint. And there was a couple of spots where he accidentally, let me see if I could show you guys on camera. So you see how there's paint missing in a couple different spots? 100% that was not his fault. He measured the paint and this car was painted. It had to have been painted somewhere like in a barn, somewhere where they use like a 1-stage paint, some prep, no prep. I mean, it was very poorly painted and it just gets exposed whenever you go to wet sand and buff the entire car. And that's kind of what happened. But I will say overall, the car does look better. So I'm happy. Now, I haven't worked on the car in about a month. So what I plan on getting done today is I want to replace a couple different hoses. If you guys remember, I got to do this valve cover hose. They had it wrapped with electrical tape and it's cracked on one side. So this is somewhat of a vacuum leak. Today, I do want to replace the ignition coils with the Audi coils that I have. And then I'll also have to replace the harness, which I'll show you clips in back there. And it extends out through the valve cover. So let's get started. So here's the old one and here's the new one. And remember guys, I provided you guys, just wanted to make sure that that one wasn't ripped, but I provided you guys with the part number on this one. I'll show you guys a little picture of the baggie again. It looks pretty much identical. So here we go. Here's the part number on that particular hose. Okay, so that's all done. Now we're going to move on to the coils. So I'm just going to unplug every single one of them. And then there's a short piece of harness that actually gets plugged into the back, into the main wire harness. I'm going to unplug that and then just get that old harness out of there. right, so here she is. Obviously, you want to be as careful as possible. From what I've seen, sometimes these harnesses, they do get very, very fragile. From the heat, obviously these wires, they can only withstand so much and they get very brittle and they end up cracking on the inside. As you can tell, mine doesn't look in bad condition, so I'm gonna try to preserve it as much as possible. I'm gonna clean it up and then obviously just put it somewhere where I could remember. Okay guys, so I got every single ignition coil loosened up. One thing to keep in mind is the only reason why mine were so easy to take off is because I had already been in there. I've already removed the screws that I'm removing right now. So you guys actually might be better off using a socket because the Phillips head that's on those little screws might strip out depending on how old it is. So just keep that in mind. All right, so here's one out. And as you guys can tell, they're not in bad shape. But again, with these ignition coils, you just never know. Visually, they can look like they're good, but they might not be performing very well. Okay, so I got the first ignition coil in. As you guys can tell, it sits a little bit higher than the OEM ones do. But these are the shorter version of the coils. The other ones actually sit up higher, the Audi, the R8s. So these coils, when I put the first one in, it kind of gave me a little bit of heart failure because it felt kind of not too snug, but that's because I didn't have it seated all the way. So you got to push down firmly on them. And as you guys can tell, like this thing isn't like it's going nowhere. There's no movement whatsoever on it. It clips onto the actual spark plug. So everything should turn out pretty good. And then for the harness that I got from Wiring Specialties, there's a ground strap that it looks like I have to put somewhere. This connects onto the main harness where my hand is holding, and then everything else is self-explanatory. You just plug in the coils accordingly. Okay, so I think we're all done. So all the coils are in, the harness is in. There was a ground strap that was on that harness, which it took a little bit of investigating, but there's two common places where they put that ground strap. The first spot, hopefully I could zoom in and you guys can see it, there's two bolts that are open right above the exhaust manifold. That's spot number one. The only reason why I didn't feel comfortable putting it there is because if you guys remember, my valve cover gasket leaks, and of course that's the spot where oil accumulates. And then I actually just saw on the driver's side, it's the same thing. So lucky me, I think I'm gonna do valve covers next or just sooner than later. It's not a ton that it leaks, but again, it's just annoying. So oil gets on the backside of both. It looks like, usually from what I've seen is these valve cover gaskets, if you don't put a little bit of silicone on the corners, they do end up dripping. And I think that that's what the guy did not do if he even replaced the valve cover gaskets. Aside from that, I'm excited to start it up. I hope that my misfire goes away, but we will see. And then also another thing to note is if you guys look at my intake manifold, look at that. It's actually starting to get worse. So again, that's maybe something that I will have to address sooner than later, but we'll just add that to the list of the million things left to do on the car. For now, let's try to start this thing. Always nice, guys. Every once in a while I get things right the first time. So as you guys can tell, it doesn't sound weird, it's not misfiring, so that is a good sign. I probably won't take it out for a drive tonight. It is the first night where it's probably like 35 degrees and it's raining, so I don't know if the roads are going to be a little slick. I don't really want to find out. As of right now, it is a win. Now, just a little sidebar I want to show you guys. I do mess up pretty often. You see these little clips right here? I had to order new ones. Now, you see that on the ground right there? Let me zoom in a little further. Of course, me doing things a little half-assed, I had put this assembly, like this little air duct inlet, on the ground, and I had put those little things right next to it, those fasteners. And what do you think happened? I stepped on them. So, of course, I roid raged a little bit, but it's okay. Quick fix. There's the part number of what I used. These are used for a bunch of miscellaneous things, and honestly, these look a little bit nicer than the ones that were in there. These might be used for like actual body clips, but that's okay. I think I like them better. So eventually what I want to do is I want to replace all these little bolts with OEM, just new, freshen them up. Another thing that I saw was the radiator. If you guys notice, it's very loose. So I don't know if maybe like these grommets, like these bushings in here, they might be shot. Maybe the ones underneath it might be missing as well. So again, just little things that I'll replace as I go. All right, guys, here she is. I just picked her up from my buddies. He did a very good job, I will say. Now, one thing to keep in mind before I show you guys the car, the paint is fucked on the car. So excuse my language, but he did the best that he could. And he actually he said overall, it took him about 40 hours to try to wet sand and buff and correct the paint. But the paint is just a little too far gone. Basically, the prep work, I will say this, there was no prep work. If I had to guess, they probably sprayed this thing in a barn. They did not do anything besides tape off the windows and go to town. So keep that in mind. I'm just going to walk around the car really quick to get you guys some good lighting. Look at that. You could actually see your reflection off of the car. That's for starters. The hood, it looks about 80% better. Here's a look down the side. He actually ended up wet sanding and polishing the headlights, so those came out really good. So he saved me about $1,200 there. Now, there were a couple of spots where the paint was extremely thin, and again, it wasn't his fault because he measured before he started doing work. But the problem is there was so much inconsistency with the paint. So if you look at a couple different spots, like on the fenders, it looks like it got a little thin on him. So there's one spot there, another spot here, one spot on the hood. There might be a couple other spots that I haven't seen, but guys, this is nothing that is alarming. This is something that we knew going into it. And the guy that did the paint correction, he's actually going to be the guy that does the wrap on the car. So there we go. First look. All right, guys, I think that'll wrap up the video. It's freezing in here. I probably have boogers everywhere, so I apologize. It was a quick one. I was super excited to work on the car. I got accomplished what I wanted to. Coils are in, harness is in. I replaced that valve cover hose, if you guys remember, that was leaking. So not a ton of work done, but that's okay. It was successful. The car turned on. Next time, I think that I'm going to do just a little bit more maintenance. I'm sure you guys would recall, I still have a ton of parts left to replace on the car. I don't know how this weather is going to cooperate with us, but I'm going to try to do as much as I can just because I really do enjoy working on the car. So I think I'm going to call it a night, guys. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you guys. FYI, little sidebar. I couldn't resist. I took her out. She couldn't even break traction in this rain. But she's fixed. No more misfiring at wide open throttle.